want to ask you about local media. So, what do you think of like the Kiev Independent, Kiev Post, various other newspapers in Ukraine themselves? Are there any that you trust that you think they do a good job, or
Um, they are not doing abysmal job, but sometimes they do post some cringe. I must say, like I mean, it's not like it's inclusive. It's exclusive to Ukraine. Like New York Times posts cringe like all the time, right? We call them New York Times at this point, like
you
Orc
called them
Times
that
instead
today?
of yeah. So because of that, like they are posting like all sorts of Russian propaganda, absolutely horrendous shit, and yeah, so their coverage of Ukraine in 95% of time is just straight up shit. So yeah, so it's not our problem, okay? It's a problem all over the world. And but yeah, Kiev Independent, like Ukrainska Pravda, are usually the ones people read the most. But I mean, sometimes they hit and miss, but I can't say that they are like super duper horrible as well. United 24 posts a lot of stuff as well on like Twitter. Mostly I see them. Um, mostly tend to be all right, I'd say.
Okay. Now you've also you mentioned the New York Times. You've criticized the New York Times and the Washington Post. Sorry, no, my bad. The Wall Street Journal
Oh yeah,
as
yeah.
well. You've
Washington Post are not that bad
Yeah, my bad, not the Washington
usually.
Post. Yeah, so you've
Yeah,
criticized the
yeah.
Washington the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times for sort of both siding the issue in your view. Um, what exactly is your issue with them? What do you think that they've done poorly in covering the war?
Oh damn, I posted so much about that. Like I have I don't know, like many tweets that I Ukrainians take issue with, and they point out parts of the articles. First of all, in New York Times there is especially bad thing that people who do some sort of like pieces on Ukraine are Russian. That's that's an absolute calamity. I don't know what keeps happening. Maybe because there are people working there that are Russian. There are all of New York people in New York who are Russian. Apparently, I didn't know that, but whatever. Point is that not only their point of view is obviously fucking skewed. It's not even a conversation. I think they also represent Ukraine from their own imperialist, old Russian mindset. That is, it's painful to read, like to anyone in Ukraine, but also to anyone who is aware of the history at all. So that has been a fuck up on their part, or intentional. They did it so many times that I'm starting to think that probably it's not a fuck up; it's actually quite intentional. Yes, and not only they do usually both things, two things. They are the both side, like you say. So they present it as like a sort of equalizing both siding, or they are doing blatant like false narrativization. So they sometimes they I think the recent thing I've seen from them, they still use this narrative about Eastern Ukrainians wanting to be Russia and were oppressed by whoever knows who. So they still doing the old memes that are ancient and debunked 10,000 times over now, and they still push those narratives that are softcore justifying a Russian version of why the invasion happened. So denazification, protecting people in Donbass and like whatever fuck, right? And it's very, I don't know, it's so blatant and so often, especially in New York Times, that I genuinely don't think that's a mistake anymore. I think that's there's some sort of intention there. Otherwise, it's you can't really do it like 100 times and then say oopsie. There must be some sort of like plot, I guess, behind it. Some sort of like either ideological thing or problem with the stuff thing. That is, for example, maybe their workers, they think like, oh, they're Russians, they must know about it, right? And they give them the reign to write about thing Ukraine related. And also quite curious that for this entire time they haven't posted anything written by Ukrainian person at all. So that's pretty fucking curious if you ask me. But yeah,
Now,
there are plenty to critique there.
the New York Times, you just criticized them because they say that people in Eastern Europe, or Eastern Ukraine, sorry, that they support Russia. Now, you say that this isn't true. I don't think that most of them it's true for. I think that most of them don't, or people fled. A lot of people fled the region too after Russia took over. But I did watch a documentary from the DW, the German public broadcaster, and in the documentary they interviewed people in I think it was Donetsk. I think it was Donetsk. It might have been Luhansk, but they interviewed people there. And now, obviously, this is a society that's controlled by basically a totalitarian government at the time, at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
but the reporter who was embedded with them, he talked with people, and some of them were pro-Ukraine, and they were wanting to see a bright future for Ukraine, joining the European Union and NATO, and having a vibrant democracy that is a great civilization. Um, but then there were a couple people as well who were pro-Russia, who were sympathetic to the motherland. How common do you think that sentiment is in the eastern parts of Ukraine?
First of all, it really isn't my main point of critique is that it's presented by that it's the split like in between the country essentially. So half the country is like European, half wants to be Russia. That's blatantly false. There are of course people, especially now, they would be in many people when Donetsk was occupied. Like most of my friends are from Donbass, from Donetsk and things like that, and Luhansk region as well, and they left like in 2014, right? So plenty of people who managed to who were anti-Russia, pro-Ukraine, they left. So people who stayed tend to be obviously more pro-Russian, and also there are plenty of people at the front now. The most of them are Donbass citizens or Kharkiv region citizens or Kherson. All of them are Russian speakers because they have been Russified back in the day historically, right? So your affiliate, so you're like being a Russian speaker doesn't make you a Russian and doesn't make you a Russian sympathizer. That's the main issue I had with the coverage of New York Times of this issue. But when it comes to how many are they, there are people, hard to say obviously the exact number, but there are people, yeah, of course, there are collaborators, there are people who are bombed every day and they still wait for Russia here as well. It's not like it's a unique issue of some sort. A lot of people, for example, in Donbass have been heavily brainwashed. For example, I have a pretty actually horrible story about a little boy who escaped with their family. We sheltered them as refugees, and he was from Donetsk. And while he was here, we were giving them like our apartment and everything. They lived here for a year, and we like played with this kid, and he knew us. And then they returned. His mother made the choice to return to occupied Donetsk, and he went to school there. And it's been like 3 years, and then after 3 years of extensive brainwashing, he said my family, me, are Banderites, and he doesn't want to see us ever again.
Oh,
So just to highlight the brainwashing that Russia is doing to children in particular in schools, and it's been happening since 2014. So you can now it's 10 years, right? Almost 11. So some teenage people who grew up already with that intense brainwashing, right? So he said that and his actually grandma cried and everything. She said it's like, no, the girls, they're so kind to us, like good, like what do you mean they're like banderized? Me and my sister obviously, right? And he was like, no, they're evil, they're banderized. So it's just it's pretty horrendous, but no many people don't even talk about the extensive propaganda that is happening now towards children in occupied Ukraine and in Donbass. It has been going on for a decade now. So effects of that, of course, will be felt. Many of them really believe that it was Ukraine that started the whole thing. Or they bombed them or anything other. There are plenty of people who are smart enough to know that's false, but they will not admit it as well because they might be attacked by local thugs, militia, and everyone there. There are plenty of a friend of mine actually was arrested in Donetsk and kept in the cell for a year. So he managed to escape, but after they released him, he didn't say anything about like for Ukraine. He was like, "Yes, I'm pro-Russian. I'm pro-Russian," And then he left. Thankfully, he managed to escape and lives in Kharkiv region now. So there's that as well. So it's kind of difficult to estimate and to believe any sort of like statistics or anything about it because all of this is under Russian control and under guns essentially. So quite difficult to say, but the percentage is relatively small comparatively to what people in the Russia want you to believe. That I will say, obviously.
Okay.
And it got most people, of course, changed their mind as well. That's also something to put up. So people who were like not pro-Russian, they didn't want Russia here. They voted. Most people voted for Zelensky, for example, right? So it's not like it was just West voting for Zelensky. People in the East voted for Zelensky as well, right? But there were plenty of people who were not, at the very least, sort of like sympathetic. So didn't want to be Russia, but were like more favorable, right, towards Russia than they were towards, for example, the West. And after they pulled this one in 22, for example, on Kharkiv people, absolute majority of Kharkiv people now hates them, right? So they used to be in even in 22 after 2014 they still remained like sympathetic and much more loyal to Russia. And after you're getting bombed every day and your loved ones getting blown up, then many people will change their minds, obviously. So it's also something to keep in mind. For many people, annexation of Crimea and Donbass just wasn't enough for them to be like super duper anti-Russia. This, however, changed most people's minds.
So, I still have like a lot more questions. I don't know if we'll be able to get through them all before the 3 hour window. Are you okay going a little bit longer, or do you have like a hard out at three? Or at
How
the
much time has
oh,
passed already?
2.5 hours.
Yeah, probably 3 would be
Okay.
the top I can do.
Okay. So I'll
Mhm.
probably skip a bunch of these then.
Can I have a few more moments of your time? Thank you again for watching another book interview clip. The full interview is linked in the description. Right now, I need your help. I'm currently running a Kickstarter campaign for my next recently finished book, Champions of Elanthia. Champions of Elanthia is my in-depth exploration of the world of multi-user dungeons, featuring interviews with a dozen Dragon Realms and Gemstone 4 players, telling their stories and preserving gaming history. You can help me bring this project to life for as little as $5, so please back the Kickstarter today and help me fulfill this dream. I'm also happy to report that the people of GamerGate, Volumes 1 and Volumes 2, are now available on Amazon in both Kindle and hardcover formats. Thank you again for your time.